Howdy! You probably don't know who I am, and if you do, it means I sent you this video because I wanted you to watch it or was proud of it, or something. If you somehow managed to stumble across this video, your algorithm has got to be broken. Or if you somehow follow me and saw me post this, then thanks for checking it out. However, this video is not directed to any of you. For some context, I'm Annoyed-Galaxy or Lilybug, but you can simply call me Lily or Galaxy. I don't mind. The Galaxy sounds cooler. I am a writer and artist really just trying to make it in the world, and this video is a bit of a journey of my life. I wanted to create this video because I really wanted to express out into the vast universe the impact that a small little game, some may or may not know, has had on literally my entire life. This isn't meant to appease to any sort of audience or get views or really achieve any sort of goal. This honestly is a video for me, and maybe some wayward soul will find it and it'll resonate with them. But that's not the point. I'm passionate about many things in life, but never have been able to fully express my passion due to anxiety or some other obscure reason. Honestly, if there were a place where I could just write this shit down and share it with some people, I would. Yeah, I know blogs exist, but let's be honest. Making a video has a better chance of little Billy Bob Joe stumbling across this than a blog on the random side of the internet. Plus, I get to edit and make this silly little avatar. Visual stimulation and all that. The point of this video isn't meant for views anyway. It's honestly just a love letter. It's a love letter to the people behind the driving factor of my life, behind the spark that fuels me. But before I get to that, maybe it'll help to give some context. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Indiana. Literally. Look at this place. Corn and beans for miles. Life wasn't bad here. I didn't have friends my age, but I did have my parents. My parents are everything to me. They are my anchors to the world, my sole supporters sometimes, my motivation, my guides, my bestest friends of all times. Yeah, I'm best friends with my parents. They're one of the main reasons I even play video games, or draw, or write, or literally do anything. My mom always tells the tale of my first game I played. I would sit on her lap while she was playing the OG Doom, and she would let me press the button to open doors. Yeah, my mom plays Doom. Bet you can't say that about your mom, can you? She even took an entire week off her job when Doom 2016 came out so she could play the damn thing. Insane woman! Together with her and my dad, we would also play Call of Duty World at War Zombies. We always played games together, so far as to playing GTA 5 when it came out with my uncle and doing heists together. I wasn't even allowed to get an Xbox 360 until I beat Super Mario Bros. 3 on the NES. Needless to say, I got my Xbox. Point is, I come from a gaming family. It was always known that I was probably going to grow up and get a job into the gaming industry, at least try. No matter where life led me, I would hopefully be doing something with video games. Aside from my parents being gamers, video games were kinda all I had. I grew up in the middle of nowhere with severe social anxiety, undiagnosed and untreated general anxiety. People were not my forte, but also it was kinda hard to do anything with friends when we all lived miles apart, and the only thing that brought us together was school. But even then, my bonds with them weren't as strong, so I was kinda on my own for a while. Insert video games! Unlike most types of media, video games really pulled me into the worlds they created. While my active imagination did really run wild with movies and books and shows, there wasn't really anything like video games. Keep in mind, I was born in 2002, basically grew up with a new age of video games, and one of the last generations to have a fucking VHS! Video games were just so different from me with the way I became truly immersed in the world and got to interact with it. However, the games that really struck a chord the most with me were the ones with companions, characters that were your character's friends. The way these characters were written and acted towards you, they became like friends to me. They weren't just talking to my character, but to me. The first game that really struck me like this was Fable 3. Walter was such a father figure to me. His sweet and loving care for me reminded me so much of my own dad, whom I love with all my heart. So, spoilers for a 14-year-old game! When Walter was possessed by the crawler and I was forced to kill him, it broke my heart. I remember sitting there as my character held him in her arms, bawling my eyes out because I had lost a father, and he died by my hand. Only when I replayed Fable later did I realize that the fight with Walter was such a beautiful parallel to the tutorial when he trains you, but that's a topic for a different day. Walter dying and his funeral after hurt. What was worse was that all of my friends, Paige, Ben Finn, Jasper, even my brother Logan, just left. Everyone left, and I was forced to deal with my grief on my own. Later on, when I replayed Fable 3 and constructed my character Aylin and her story, I really doubled down on those feelings I felt back then and expressed them through her grief becoming so bad she fell ill, and only her brother returning and nursing her back to health helped. You can see a pattern there. A story I went through as a kid I built on top of when I got older and maturer. Some of my best writing I feel came from some of my fanfics I wrote for Fable because of the relationships to be found there. Regardless of me building upon the stories now, they still inspired me to write back then, to world build, to create. I have been writing for as long as I could hold a writing utensil. That's not saying that my writing was legible, but I knew what I was doing. Video games fueled my creativity and became the backbone of my creative spine. So, there was this game that released back in 2014. I saw my dad playing it a couple times, but only glimpses of it. As in, I saw the inventory menu and crafting menu and thought nothing of it. But for some reason, I saw more of it and then really wanted to try it out. I scoured his game discs looking for his copy, but turns out he had a digital edition and the code he had only worked once. I actually don't remember how I got access to the game. I probably asked my parents at some point, but either way, I ended up with ownership of the game and DLC. Note, I was 12 at this time. A little baby, yes I know. This game that I played was like nothing I had ever played before. It changed my life, and I'm not even exaggerating. So that old game that I picked up that changed my life, yeah, it was Dragon Age Inquisition. Even now, just thinking of that damn game is putting tears in my eyes because of what it meant for me. Seriously, this game was like nothing I had played before. I played some cool story games before, like Oblivion and Fable, but never had I played a game where there were companions who were so well written and interactable like this. These companions, they became my friends. Truly. There was something about being a little kid who didn't have that many friends that hanged out with her outside of school, finding a connection in these fictional characters behind a screen in a completely different world. Even my player character became a part of me. I was so immersed in this world, it's insane. Like, literally. I became obsessed with Inquisition and Dragon Age in general. So much so that I actually started picking up my second hobby, drawing. And attempting to get better at that, just so I could draw all the lovely scenes I could write in my mind. Writing them was fun, but being able to see them was just something else. It was at this time that I also secured the spot for my Dragon Age tattoo. Look at this photo here. It doesn't look good, but from that day, I declared that that spot on my forearm would be dedicated to the Inquisition logo. 5 years later, and a couple touch-ups later, I got the tattoo, and look at that! Every single day, I love looking at that tattoo, and it fills me up with joy. It wasn't my first tattoo, though. In fact, let me go on a quick sidebar. Since my dad played Dragon Age and got me into it, my mom was also kinda into it, though solely through watching my dad play. For some reason, my mom gets really dizzy and slightly sick if she plays any video game that's third-person view directly and not over the shoulder. Think Gears of War camera angle, rather than directly behind the character. She still mostly prefers first-person games. Either way, she was also invested in the game. The day before my 17th birthday, I wanted to get my first tattoo. My parents, tattooed as they were, celebrated that I was finally wanting one. It took me a while to figure out what I wanted, and I thought about getting the Avengers symbol small and somewhere. Thank God I did not do that, and I thank my parents every day for dissuading me from that one. So I ended up with wanting a family tattoo with them. When they asked me of what, I had to think about it. That's when I landed on something that had to do with Dragon Age. There was a piece of dialogue between Solus and a romanced Llewellyn where he says Alath Mavanan, which translated to I love you, my heart. So I did some reverse engineering and luckily found out that Arlath meant I love you, while Mavanan was my heart. Is this confirmed somewhere in the game? I swear. So I did some looking and found the word for family. The Thal. So I decided we should get a tattoo in Elvish, my favorite race, from my favorite game that my favorite people were a part of. So we all ended up getting Arlath Malathal as family tattoos. My first ever tattoo. That is truly my favorite tattoo. So there's just another idea of how much this game meant to me that I got not one, but 2 tattoos dedicated to the damn thing. But tattoos aren't that life-changing, so what happened? Well, if we go back to the whole companion thing, these guys became my best friends. Sarah, Bull, Dorian, Varric, Cullen, Liliana, Josephine, almost every single companion became close to me. I cared for some more than others, but regardless, all of them meant something to me, and I loved them all. Kinda. There was just something so strong about these characters that they made me feel less alone and more human, I guess. I felt like I actually had some social interactions and I was becoming a person. Keep in mind, I was literally preteen going into teenager when I played this game. Critical developing point! When I played Trespasser some years later, I bawled my eyes out when I married Cullen, saw Solus leave with a promise to destroy the world, dismantled the Inquisition, and said goodbye to all my friends. It was the saying goodbye to everyone that really hurt, and that was when I realized my connection to these characters was special. They had truly made me feel less alone, and I think I cried as much as I did because I had to say goodbye to them. There was not going to be any more interactions with them because it wasn't like I could call them for a chit-chat. Our time was over. They changed me. They made me realize what kind of person I was and the way that I helped them with their own problems, and the way we sometimes clashed, and the way I agreed or didn't agree on some of their worldviews. That was when my passion was solidified. It was always known that I was going to work with video games. I just hadn't yet discovered what I really wanted to do. After finishing Inquisition, I knew that my future lay in writing for video games. And what a time to discover this, with the future being bright for video game design. I wanted to be able to make characters that people could relate to, that people could be friends with, that another lonely kid in school could make a friend and feel like they weren't as alone as they thought. I wanted to be able to share these feelings with other people. From there, I decided to play all the Dragon Age games, going completely backwards. I went on to play Dragon Age 2, and that made my desire stronger. Varric and Anders became closer to me, and I cared about them a lot. So much so that scene with Anders hurt, but because I loved him so much, I couldn't let him go. But I discovered I had a superpower. I can write fix-it-fix! So whenever something bad happens in the game, or I really want to expand on a scene I felt like didn't get enough time, I can just write it myself. These games gave me so much passion to write beyond what the game script gave me. It just sealed the deal that this is what I wanted to do. Video games are such an amazing medium because of the insane power they have on us, and I wanted to be involved in that. I wanted to make people feel. I wanted to make people care about characters so much that they would create their own fan clubs about them. I just wanted to take part in that power. So that's how I went to college. So far it sounds like all I did was play video games and nothing else. I'll have you know, I was a straight A 4.0 GPA student in my entire school career up to college. It's how I landed a full ride scholarship to NYU for a summer program and got to live in New York fucking City for an entire month by myself at 17 years old. It was terrifying, but freaking awesome. I had such an amazing time at NYU and learned a lot. Though the courses I took weren't exactly what I wanted to do because they involved coding, and I had no coding experience. And in fact, I hate math and numbers and symbols and literally anything that isn't fucking words or letters! So it was rough for me. But regardless, the experience of living in the Big Apple and learning how to navigate life on my own was really helpful as a country kid. Which, by the way, I had moved to a city by this time, but it was still pretty small compared to New York! Now that I think about it, it literally feels like something that would happen on the Disney Channel. Like this part of my life belonged on an episode of Jessie or some shit. Anyways, after my summer at NYU, I figured why the hell not and apply there. After all, it was Tisch I went to, and Tisch had some big alumni and was one of the growing academias for video game study. However, I was denied. Something my family's too broke. But I didn't actually really want to go to NYU anyways. I just thought it would be cool. When I did my research of the best video game schools in the country, I found quite a few schools. But when it came to video game writing, well, there was this little tiny place out in Utah that I applied to and accepted me. Enter University of Utah. You know, going to Utah wasn't ever something I thought I would do. Honestly, I didn't even know we had a state called Utah. This is a joke. So while I was a bit hesitant of going to a nowhere state, I was actually kind of excited to go to Salt Lake City, which I had heard of. SLC comes up quite a bit in some media, and honestly, the real SLC is a lot smaller than I imagined. By now, I basically know most of the area, and it's tiny compared to New York or Chicago. Our downtown is fake compared to big city downtowns. We also don't have a cool mall, and no, City Creek doesn't count because it's owned by fake people. But let me tell you, I was in absolute awe when my parents and I drove between the mountains and entered the valley. Seeing what would be my new home for at least the next 4 years was such a surreal moment. I remember smiling so big and seeing the city and just being in awe at the fact that I was actually going to live alone for the first time in my life. It was a bittersweet moment, and I cried when my parents left. My first few weeks in college were some of the roughest times of my life. I typically don't have an issue sleeping, but those first few nights were pretty rough, and I didn't get much sleep. Not to mention the big damn that happened. So if you've been keeping track of the timeline at all, my freshman year of college was in the fall of 2020. You know what happened in 2020, right? Yeah, so my first year wasn't great, but it was still a big important step for me. Originally, I signed up to be in EAE, the Entertainment Arts and Engineering program. That was like the video game program. I was going to get a bachelor's in this department. I was so excited at my curriculum, except there were no writing classes. A lot of my classes in EAE were focused on art or programming or designing. I had to take Comp 1010, which made me want to jump off a fucking bridge. Trying to learn any amount of code online was hell. It was so bad that I took a no credit my second semester in Comp 1020. Luckily, I only needed 1010. But I found myself unhappy with what my future held for me. Don't get me wrong, I was still excited to be involved in video games, but none of this was what I wanted to do, so I was very scared and sad. I took a class called EAE 1010, Survey of Games. This class was taught by an amazing professor by the name of Corinne Lewis. One of the classes, we were talking about different things that go into games, etc. I didn't know what brought it up, but after class I asked her, "Hey, I want to write for video games. What do I need to do for that?" And she told me advice that changed my path. Go get an English degree and major in that. Literally my first couple weeks of college, and for what I wanted to do, I was already in the wrong major. But hey, from what I hear, changing majors in college is normal. I'm pretty happy I found out I was in the wrong major early on because it made life easier. I was still just doing gen eds mainly anyways, so I looked into it. It turns out the University of Utah, a prominent school that has some ties and some big industry giants out there such as Riot and Blizzard, was kind of spearheading the study of video game narrative. So much so that there was this fancy little degree that was created in 2019, maybe one of the first of its kind, the Bachelor's of Science in English. Trying to explain this to some old people has revealed to be a headache. A normal bachelor's in English is one of art, you know, creative writing and shit, and the normal English? No, I get to be fancy and sound smarter than I am with my Bachelor's of Science. Ooh, spooky. It was the best decision of my life. I will admit the curriculum was still a bit underdeveloped, clearly in its infantile stages, but my god, it was exactly what I wanted. I got to write and be creative for a good chunk of my college career. There were a couple classes of great importance, the ones that really mattered and helped me in college. Video game storytelling, advanced video game storytelling, film, literature, and video games, and story crafting for games. These were the 4 prominent classes that stood out to me from my whole 4-year college experience. 3 of those classes I took under the tutelage of a man named Dr. Alf Siegert. Dr. Siegert is a prolific board game designer and a prominent professor at the U. His classes were life-changing and allowed me to think about video games way more closely than before. We studied narrative a lot in his classes, going so far as to study things like mechanics as metaphor, passive and active interaction, emergent narratives, different ways to show narrative in games, etc. I also got to just play video games for homework and talk about them. My parents were so jealous. Dr. Seegert seemed like a person who matched my own passion for narrative and video games. He, along with a few other board members, hired what would be professors for the graduate level of studies for video game narrative. And while I'm not going for my master's just yet, I will definitely be going back to the U at some point to dive into that program. I'm just going to wait until it's a little bit more refined. Storycrafting for games was the other really big class I took, taught by Adam Hunter. The final project was one of the most important things I did in college. I got to create a game book, an essentially choose your own adventure type thing. I was so proud of my game book that I still have plans to turn it into an actual game eventually. 4 years of college and 4 life-altering classes that I experienced, all because one specific game became the final push I needed to figure out what I really wanted to do. What was so incredible is that I really felt like I was part of something new. It seems like the research of video game narrative is still relatively new, and while the University of Utah is one of the top schools in the country for video game design, narrative is still catching up. I grew up in a time where it seemed like video games could never be a professional thing. Now I've actually gone to college and got to study the power and magic of the video game medium and the impact it has on people. 4 years later, and I have secured my degree, the proud and happy owner of a Bachelor's of Science, and I get to gleefully say I studied video games in college. Take that, Grandma! It is currently the month of September 2024 as I write this out and make this video. I graduated in May, literally a day after my birthday. I had an amazing graduation with lots of friends coming out to support me and celebrate both my achievement and birthday. It was an amazing time, and honestly, I miss college. I've been going to school my entire life. It's just been a part of who I am, and without it, it's been a struggle to figure out how to function as a human being. With no structure, I kind of feel lost. I won't lie. I think, and my friends say it, I burned myself out. As much as I loved college, it wasn't easy. I went through a lot of shit and had to deal with things I had never dealt with before. I worked a good chunk of my college life too. For almost a year and a half, I had to schedule 4 days of classes and homework, followed by 3 days of a job and homework. I didn't really ever give myself a chance to relax. When I moved into my current house, I worked a literal 21 days straight at 2 jobs, 4 days with an 11 to 7 shift and 3 days with a 10 to 3 shift, just so I could make enough to pay for rent. I literally died that summer. I felt horrible, and I feel like part of me is still recovering from working so hard. I'm in a better position due to some circumstances, but I'm starting to realize that what I did in college was not healthy. I know I'm not alone in that fact, but I realize that I may be a bit of a workaholic. An unhealthy one. Is there even a healthy workaholic? Since graduating, I have been relaxing, essentially. And if you know anything about workaholics, I beat myself up about this fact, literally. I try to work by working on my drawing and writing skills, but it never feels like enough. I am so tired and exhausted that I feel myself falling apart. But the best part I got out of college? My epic friend group. I live in a house with 6 other people, and they are some of my closest friends, being there for me through thick and thin. Living in this house with them changed my life, and I became surrounded by real-life people who cared about me and helped me. When I was going through some of the hardest and roughest parts of my college career, they were there for me, helping me out. We even have our own silly little channel where we've actually gotten to flex our creative muscles and such for silly videos. It's been an amazing experience, and I wouldn't be where I am now without them. So, back in 2014, that's when I played a small little video game that solidified what I wanted to do. And 10 years later, I have a college degree and a big group of friends both near and far. So what's to come next, and why did I even bother making this life story video for no one? Well, call it fate, but the very game series that sent me to college has come back to greet me as soon as I finished college. In summer, we all got the announcement that Dragon Age was finally returning. 10 years, and now a little over a month away, Veilguard will be releasing Dragon Age, the game that sent me to college. It's coming back the literal year I graduated college. I don't care what you believe in. That shit cannot be coincidence. Maybe it's silly to think it's destiny or fate, but fuck it. I don't care. It's poetic. You can't argue with that. That's why I made this video. It is absolutely insane to me that a game that spearheaded my journey to and through college has returned on the eve of the end of that journey. While my future is still uncertain, I know one thing. I am doing a full-on Dragon Age marathon and excitedly awaiting for Veilguard. My writing skills and art skills both have improved since I was a kid, and I am stretching those creative muscles and getting ready to work on some epic fanfic and get motivated to draw my favorite characters. In the between times, I do still plan to work on personal stuff. It's just taking me a while. Like I said, I burnt myself out in college. I didn't really get a chance to improve on a lot of my skills, nor learn some things I wanted to. I'm taking the time to do that now and hopefully build up something and work somewhere that isn't literal hell and be satisfied with my life. It's been a rough journey, but I have changed for the better because of it all, and I couldn't be happier. So, to you, Dragon Age, and the developers behind Dragon Age, and the world within and the characters within that, thank you for everything. Thank you for shaping me into the person I am. Thank you for helping me become more passionate about my creativity and driving me through the rough world we live in. And I hope that one day I can make someone feel strongly about something as I have about you. Alath Mavanan. Help.